I think that we can sometimes feel guilt and obligation towards certain things, especially if we've been doing them for a long time. And it can feel really hard to kind of pull out of that and just say, I'm not the right person for this anymore. I need to provide space for this opportunity for someone else to come in, and I can then go and help someone else. And so that's one of those things where if you start to feel resistance, it's one of my favorite words. If you feel resistance around something, don't pull back, don't ignore it, lean into it and get really uncomfortable and try and figure out why. And boundaries. Boundaries are really hard, but setting up boundaries around what it is that you do want to spend time doing and what you don't is going to be huge, especially if you do happen to be a high-level career person or someone who owns your own business or you're a parent. Honestly, pretty much if you're human, boundaries is probably that key for you.
Desiree, it is absolutely awesome to have you on the podcast. We have been introduced through a mutual friend, and it's not very often that I get to chat to someone that I haven't met or haven't chatted with before, and I've really enjoyed it. So totally getting to know people from scratch. It's been so nice. So to kick us off, tell me a little bit about you and where you are now.
Yeah. Well, at the current moment, I own a leadership development company. So there's a lot that goes into that. But essentially, I have a passion for helping teams with things like Working Genius and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and DISC. I just really love going into a group of individuals who've been working together for a long time and helping them to communicate better and to thrive together. I know that was a lot of buzzwords, but those tend to help people to kind of understand what it is that I do. I'm also a keynote speaker, an author, a podcast host. So a lot of it goes into the quote unquote thought leadership that you really need to be accountable to yourself and to kind of hold yourself to a high standard. And that's when you get to then hold other people to high standards. So that's kind of a little bit of what I do in my company. And yeah, there's been a lot to lead up to this point, but I'm feeling really good about where I'm at. So
that is awesome. Wow. Podcast, author, own company. We're going to get into exactly how you got here. So first, let's go all the way back in time to young you. Tell us where you started, like that very first paycheck or, I don't know, dollar.
Yeah, well, that's a very long ways back. I was 15 and my cousin asked me to take a certified nurse's assistant class with her because she didn't want to do it by herself. I had no interest in being in nursing, but I went with her, ended up kind of falling in love with all of the terminology, with the idea of helping people, and ended up working at a nursing home for a long time, for probably the first 4 years of, before I got into college, kind of that first year of college, working with the elderly, working with the individuals who couldn't necessarily help themselves. And I really fell in love with it. But I will say that I kind of was rushing. So, it's the hurry up and wait. I did post-secondary school in high school. So I skipped my senior year of high school. I wanted to get into college, so I did that early, then ended up graduating from college a little bit early, and then I had a management degree, and I just sat and I waited, and I expected someone to come and say, okay, here's your management job, have fun with it, and it didn't happen. So I did a bunch of other things. I waitressed, and I worked in a collections department in a bank, and a lot of jobs that were not anything close to what it is that I wanted to do. But I'm so thankful for all of them because you learn lessons along the way. Specifically in collections, you're calling people asking for money. And there, I would argue to say, wasn't a lot of empathy when I started that job. There was a lot of empathy by the time I finished. Same thing with waitressing. You kind of look at things from your own perspective, and then you have to learn to just be kind and generous, whether the other people are kind or generous back. And it's a skill that you really can't just you have to learn it. And so there was just a lot of those kind of odd jobs that ended up being pivotal in the way that I did run through my leadership career once I finally got there. So at the age of 24, I had the management degree. I had been waiting. I had been saying how big of a waste of time college was because no one would just give me a job. And I thought that's what everyone was saying would happen. You get a college degree and it's great. And then I went in for an assistant's position at a dementia facility and ended up walking out with a management position, which turns out I wasn't qualified for. And so there was a reason no one would just hand me a job. But yeah, so I ended up with a management position, and that was kind of where all of the leadership journey started.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot, all by the time
It's a
you're
lot to
24,
unpack.
right? Yeah, it's incredible to go through stories. It's just amazing what we do, actually, like what we achieve at such a young age. So you started I mean, we're going to go all the way like to the beginning. Started in a nursing home when you were 15. I mean, that must have been
Eye-opening.
yeah, eye-opening. I was thinking shaping. I was struggling for the word. So tell us about that experience. I mean, that must have been, both
Yeah.
joyful and hard.
It was. And one of the things I remember most about that time is my friends and, people my age would say the word old. And they'd say, oh my gosh, they're so old. And they're talking about like 40 and 50-year-olds, we're 15 at the time. And I'm just like, I just took care of someone who's 110 years old yesterday.
Wow.
Like it was just this understanding of the perspective that can change when you put yourself into situations that you wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity to be in. So that was, I would argue to say, one of the most memorable things for me outside of doing the actual work and it being the hardest thing I had ever done up until that point. And part of the story that I share in my book and I talk about often in my podcast is I was a very overweight kid. And so I went in at 15, very overweight, it was really hard to kind of move around. And I was supposed to be helping lift people and turn them and help them walk. And I was struggling with some of those things myself. And so that was ultimately the catalyst for when I started to take care of myself and my body too. And recognizing that you could do both simultaneously has helped me a lot over the course of time too. But yeah, a lot of lessons were learned, especially, like I said, the really helping to understand people and understand what it means to actually help someone when there's not all that much in it for you.
Yeah, that's huge. That really is. And just dealing with old people. Yeah.
It's all perspective.
Yes, exactly. And getting that perspective at such a young age, I mean, that's wonderful. I think I've only just got that perspective. Like I turned 40 last year, so I'm now 41. And now I'm like, I am not old. Like they're, like, hell no. So yeah, and which is probably a perspective I only just got. So that's very cool. All right. So then you did college, you didn't get the management job, which is, yeah, very funny because I went through something very similar, studied, and also I was like, don't you want me? Everyone must want me. I've done this studying. So yeah, that must have been tough. So not getting the jobs, doing all the other things, saying that college was a waste, just say like what you were going through at that time, like all the pivots, all the decisions you were making, did you feel lost or were you like things will work out, just what was going on in your mind?
The funny thing is I just took the Clifton Strengths assessment the other day, and one of my strengths was futuristic. And I was like, that's not me. That doesn't seem right. And then I read the description of just recognizing that everything you're doing in the moment is going to add to what it is that you're going to do next. And I don't think I obviously couldn't have put that into words back then, but I think it was a feeling that I had. I knew that, the internship that I did where the days were really long, it was going to actually add to what it was that I wanted to do at some point in time. And working at a nursing home, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be in the medical side of healthcare, but my mom had been in the administrative side of healthcare forever. And so I was like, this is my way to get into what it is I've said I've always wanted. And so all of the pivots, the decisions, the hard days, the days are long, but the years are short. Couldn't be more true. And so it really was about just kind of adding on those building blocks. And that ended up being what my book was about. I at 15, didn't recognize that that's what I was doing, but it's just building that really solid foundation of both experiences and knowledge and relationships so that they can just continue to build on top of each other and create something that you never knew was even a possibility. So again, I couldn't put it into words at that point, but that's essentially what I was doing.
And I love that. And I resonate. Actually, futuristic is my top strength.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. And so I get that, like just everything, you're like, okay, I'm going through this hard. It's going to help me in my next step. Yes. So yes, I fully relate to that. Okay. So then you got this management role and you said you were absolutely not ready for that. And again, totally relate. I'm like, don't you want to employ me and promote me? And like, oh, no, wait, actually, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So how long were you in that role, that job, that place? For?
So I started, I think I was 24 at the time, and I left just after COVID restrictions kind of let up. And so I was leading the dementia facility alongside a couple of other leaders during the pandemic, which was the absolute hardest and probably the most significant thing I've ever been through. So I don't remember what your question was, but I just got lost in all the memories. They all started to come back.
How long were you there?
Oh my goodness.
No, I was just asking how long were you there? Because
so it was about
I wanted
3
to
years.
understand. Like it was how many years?
3.
3 years. Okay. So, and then you mentioned that it was the most significant thing in your life. So tell me more about that.
Okay. So I was not a great leader. I really struggled. I thought, we go through schooling, but there's no actual implementation of what it is you're learning. And so I really, really struggled as a leader to gain influence and trust with my team. I was micromanaging. I was doing all the things. During that time, I got pregnant and had my first baby. And then 6 months later, COVID happened. And all of a sudden, the world shifted and we had to... It wasn't about, are you a good leader or a bad leader? It's how well can you survive these restrictions that have been put on you by a higher power. And that was actually when I started to read personal development. I started to kind of get back into shape after having a baby. I started to really focus on what it meant to be a good leader and to be supportive and have empathy for this situation that for the first time in a really long time, everyone was going through the same thing. We all had our own circumstances going into it, but we ultimately were all dealing with this new thing. And so I would argue to say that's what significantly shifted for me, was helping to understand how to work with the situation that's given to you and one that you have very little say in. And having a 6-month-old at home and a husband who had to stay home with the 6-month-old because we didn't have daycare, a lot of things changed during that time that you, in hindsight, wouldn't trade for the world. But at the moment, it was pretty impossible.
Yeah, what were some of those silver linings for you?
In hindsight, or
in hindsight, isn't it all in hindsight?
I picked up personal development books for the first time in my life during that period. I knew that I wasn't doing as good of a job handling the situation as I could have. So one of the silver linings was recognizing that you have a lot more control over situations than you realize. And that's something that I've taken both in my own life, but in the business that I'm now creating. It's one of my core messages is you have control over a lot more than you realize. So that was a big silver lining for me. I didn't have to go through it alone. My mom was also in administration in healthcare. And so having someone to lean on, we may or may not get to this, but my mom has since passed away. And so a silver lining in that is just having had her to kind of bounce things off of and have her as a mentor, someone that she was no longer my mom in that moment. She was like my mentor that I was asking for help from and who was supporting me through that. So that was a big silver lining. And then one of them was just that as a team, we came together really well during that time because we all had this main objective, which, like I said, was just to survive. We just needed to get through it. And so we all started working together better and we all started to understand each other better. And by the time we came out of it, we had much stronger relationships and everything kind of looked different after that. So that was a huge silver lining, was we would have never asked for it. We would never ask for it again. But I believe, did the best that we could in a situation that was pretty impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. And having a 6-month-old must have also been very scary because little babies were, mine were 2 and 3. So like I just
Mm-hmm.
remember that fear of being a parent and not knowing what's happening, and do you vaccinate your kid? Do you not? Is it
Right.
all the things? It was so much. So that must have been really hard.
It was. You can be the futuristic piece of you is recognizing that the things you went through have just added to your opportunities for the future. And I try and look at it in that sense. There were things that were lost during that time. And for some people, it was the hardest time of their life. I'm very thankful that and grateful that for me, it was a time where I got to really dig into who I wanted to be and my physical and mental health. And I know not everyone had that opportunity, but for me, that was something that I was really able to grab onto and has kind of helped me through all of the additional struggles that I've been in through since then. It's kind of a catalyst for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I want to, because I am a development junkie. I mean, that's why the podcast is called this. I'm like, we're developing every single day. And I think that is and sometimes the futuristic strength gets mistaken for the learner. But where learners love to learn, futuristic people like to learn to lead somewhere, like to get to that next place. So I don't know if you can relate to that at all, but yeah,
100%.
all my colleagues guessed I was a learner, and like learner was on my bottom, like the bottom 5. I'm like,
Interesting.
yeah, even though I'm in L&D, I know, don't tell anyone, but so tell me some of the best development books. I mean, just because I want to literally write them down and download them.
So I have a list of all of my favorites, and I'm happy it's just a free download that you can have or you can share with your guests. But it would be really hard for me to choose some. I will tell you some of my original favorites that kind of, I could have read a personal development book and it could have been, whatever. And then I went to read another one, but I read one and then I read another, and they just kind of took me down this spiral of needing to read all of them. And so a few of those were Finish by John Acuff. I love all of his books. If you haven't heard of him, you need to go and buy one of his books right now.
I am writing it down.
Yes. So Finish, soundtracks, All It Takes Is a Goal. He's fantastic. Gretchen Rubin, if you know who that is, she has her podcast Happier, which was the first podcast I ever listened to. Still listen to it today, 520 some episodes later. But she had a book called The Happiness Project, where she went through what would it look like to make my life happier. And not all of those things were obvious. Some of them were uncomfortable things that she had to do, but to ultimately make her life happier. And so that really helped me shape some perspective as well. John Maxwell was the first author that I read as far as leadership goes. And Patrick Lencioni is since my favorite leadership development author. I really love reading his books. And then on that list of all the books, I have memoirs of some of my favorite memoirs. I have parenting books, things that have literally saved my life. And so like I said, I am a talent development nerd just like you. I truly love reading. I usually read 60 to 100 books a year. That's why I wrote my own. There's some books that will just change your life if you kind of open your heart to let them. So.
Oh, I love that so much. You should have that as a quote. It is so true. And yeah, I've actually got Happier downloaded, not the podcast, but there's a book, Happier. And so that's like in my top 3 next reads. I'm always like, got a list. I've got too many books that I need to get through.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I don't actually read books. I listen to books because I drive like anywhere between 2 to 4 hours a day. So but it's great learning time. So
yes. I read and listen to a lot of podcasts too, but there's something about a personal development book where I can highlight that makes it a lot more engaging for me. So yeah, but it's to each their own, right? It's whatever works for you to make
sure
you're engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So pandemic, gone into that. I do want to ask, like, tell me about your mom. I lost my dad 5 years ago, and I love talking about him. So if you love talking about her, I'd love to know more about your mom.
I'm going to struggle because yesterday was 3 years exactly since the day she had her stroke. So it's a little bit of
Anniversaries
an
are
emotional time.
so
But
hard.
my mom was the materials manager at a hospital my whole life. So some of my earliest memories were going to her work, and she just had boxes of highlighters, right? Because she was the materials manager, and just getting to play with all of the Post-its and highlighters, and just the best experience. She was a working mom, which for me was just normal at that point, and she loved her job. She had so much passion for it. And it kind of gave me that runway to know, like, if something isn't giving you the joy and the passion that you desire, there is something that will. And so I've thought about that a lot as I've gone through my many different career iterations and such. But when I got into into an internship in high school, it happened to be at the hospital that she was working at. And so we got to go to work together every day for 3 months. And that's when our mother-daughter relationship really turned into friends. We ended up, because we were both in healthcare, different companies, she was at a hospital, I was at a nursing home. We got to go on trips together. And she was my best friend. My son was born during a blizzard, and because of the blizzard, there was no planes or helicopters or ambulances to come and get him when we found out that he had a collapsed lung and just wasn't doing well after being born. We don't have a NICU at our hospital, and so we had to wait 15 hours with him being manually intubated in order for him to get to this NICU, and he ended up being there for a month. Well, because of COVID restrictions were still slightly in place at that point. He wasn't able to be seen for the most part. It was the last day, one of the last days we were there, my mom got to come and spend the whole day with us without a mask on, and it was just amazing. And we got home, and 24 hours later, I got a call that she had had a stroke. And so we packed up my 2.5-year-old and my 30-day-old, and we had to drive a couple of hours to the hospital that she was in. And because of COVID restrictions that were still in place, I wasn't able to bring my newborn into the ICU. So I only got to see her twice before she passed away 2 months later from a second stroke. So when I say that the challenges of COVID were the best times of my life, they also ended up creating some of the hardest things that I ever went through, just because of the restrictions that were still in place, because of the fear that COVID had set in everybody. And I'm appreciative of the restrictions. I can understand them, but at the same time, it's like one of those things that you wish you could just change the way that it happened. But The Power of Regret by Daniel Pink, I couldn't read any grief books after she passed away. But eventually I could read The Power of Regret. There was a few things that I just really regretted in relation to my mom and the time spent with her and such. And that book was huge for me in overcoming and changing my mindset around those last couple of months with her.
Oh, that was a tough time for you. That was really.
And sorry, that was probably more than you bargained for and what you asked for, but it's hard to tell just a small part of that story because it was all intertwined. And I had 5 or 6 family members, a grandma, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin within a year pass away. And so it was like just nothing bad had ever happened to me ever. And then all of a sudden it was like one thing after the other. And that's what my book is about. 6 months after I went through all that, I said, why am I not broken? It doesn't make any sense. Like, my mom was my best friend. My cousin, who also happened to be one of my best friends, had committed suicide. Like, all these things had happened. And my son was okay, thankfully. He just turned 3. He's amazing. But I was like, why am I not broken? I should be broken. Granted, I was having panic attacks. I was seeing a counselor, things like that. But at the end of the day, I still wanted to exercise and read and stretch and spend time with my kids and spend time with friends. And it came down to what we've been talking about this whole time, which is the fact that I had spent 8-10 years building up habits, building up a really strong foundation, building up really good relationships, so that when something bad or many, many bad things did happen, I still craved and desired to be adding value to myself and to kind of engaging myself in those habits and in those practices that I knew at the end of the day would make me happier and more resilient.
Yeah, that is what a great lesson to take out of all of that. Like, You're amazing. What is your book called?
It's called Taking Intentional Action, How to Choose the Life You Lead.
Okay. Oh, love that. That is so good. We will add it. For sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So all of this happens. Then you decide to write a book. Like, talk about, stepping up, like just like taking all of that. I have in my mind, and I do a lot of metaphors, but I have in my mind like this, like crushed building, and you decide like instead of just leaving it as rubble, you're going to like take all these broken pieces and like build this beautiful thing out of it. Like that's how I'm seeing your story in my mind. And yes, you've mentioned it, but you touched on it, I suppose, not really gone into it, but to get to the place of writing the book and reading the Daniel Pink's book, where did that come from? I mean, that was like just so internal, right? And I know you, like you said, I briefly mentioned it, but just just what got you through, what got you, to get up and exercise and.
Well, I have to be honest.
You're giving advice to other people going through a tough time.
Yeah, I will be honest and transparent by saying that I had a 1-month-old. I didn't really have the option to just shut down. I question a lot, actually. I reflect on a lot. Would I have been destroyed, if I didn't have my 2.5-year-old and my 1-month-old? And I have 3 sisters, and they're all amazing and they made it through it. But I just think to myself, would I have been able to be okay if I didn't have these 2 tiny humans that needed me and 3 sisters that needed me to be strong? But when I look back on that, I also think to myself, it's like, I knew that when I got a letter that she had left us each $10,000, I said, what am I going to do with this? It has to create a legacy for her. It has to mean something. And I wasn't sure. I thought on it for a really long time. And I said, I want to help other people. My mom was the most kind and generous human with the brightest smile. And if you ever saw a picture of my daughter, she's just got this voluminous, that's the wrong word, voluminous curly hair. And she always says, I got it from my grandma Tammy. And she was just the kindest person. I said, how can I bring that into what I do every day? I like to think I'm a kind person, but not helping people in the way that I wanted to, especially with as much as I've read and the podcasts I've listened to and the experiences I've had. So I said, I'm going to use this money and I'm going to get my coaching certification. I want to be a life coach. I want to help other people through hard things that they're going through and help them to level up in their life and in their career. And so I ended up, you know how your phone listens to you, and I don't care what anyone says.
It does.
And I swear it was the day after I told my husband that that's what I wanted to do. The John Maxwell coaching certification popped up in my Instagram feed. And I looked into it. I had 1 call with an advisor, and I was like, yep, this is what I'm doing. I flew to Florida. I went to the 3-day conference. I got my coaching certification. Turns out they have a speaking certification with it. And I was like, I could do that. I enjoy being in front of people. I really love to share my story. And it kind of set off this spiral of like, what more could I do to add value to other people? And turns out I don't actually love one-on-one coaching. And so I'm glad that there were some other options. But yeah, and I ended up getting my coaching certification. I started speaking. I started working with companies, working internal in teams, like I told you about. I started my podcast, and the book was just a reflection on the fact that there's probably 3 books that I can point at that say this book changed my life. I might even be able to get so specific as to say this quote inside this book by this author changed my life. And I just thought, what if I could be that for somebody? What if something that I said and an experience that I went through could be the thing that changed someone's life? And I wanted to share it. And I said, if no one reads it, that's okay. But you know what I have now? I have a memoir for the first 30 years of my life that if my kids ever wanted to get to know me really well, they could pick that up and they would know me really well. Because in case you can't tell, I'm very transparent. I don't hold anything back. There's 0 filter there. And that's kind of what my book is. And that's that's ultimately what's behind it, is just wanting to create that opportunity for someone to change their life in the way that some of those books did for me.
Oh, yeah, that is lovely. I'm really enjoying getting to know you and your story, and I'm sure that is how most people feel in the room where you are, where you help leadership, right? That's what you're doing now. So let's get into that. So
Yeah.
2020, 2021, and then now it's been 4 years since then. So take us through that chunk of your life.
So after I left the healthcare facility, I did a stint in printing for 6 months, realized I don't want to be in a concrete room with no windows and not talking to anybody. I don't know why I ever thought I would like that. But anyway, I ended up going to the Chamber of Commerce, and I was the events coordinator there. Like I said, I had fallen in love with personal development, and I wanted to be the person that got to create the events that people would come to and learn from. How amazing, right? And so I started to do that. And in that process, I was essentially forced to network because that was part of my job description. But I just fell in love with, what are business leaders experiencing right now? What are they struggling with? What could they be helped with? And so 2.5 years into the chamber experience, and my mom had passed away, and I had gotten this coaching certification, I said, I don't ever want to leave the chamber. I'm going to be here forever. But what if I could do something in addition? And that's when I started kind of working with teams. And because of the Chamber of Commerce and my connections there, things kind of spiraled and went faster than I could have anticipated. And I had a lot of trust and camaraderie built up with the business connections. And so I really was given these opportunities to go in and work with teams a lot sooner than I think just someone, that maybe didn't have that. So if you're listening to this and you need one piece of advice from me today, it would be join your Chamber of Commerce, because the relationships that you build there and the networking that you can do, there is no match to the community you can build there. But yeah, I ultimately did end up leaving the chamber. I told them, I said, I will forever be a chamber member. I'm an ambassador. My business is a member. I go to the networking events, all the things. But I said, this business could be something and I could help people. And so that's kind of what I've been building. And in the last 2 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been continuing to network and get to know people and help teams where I can. And I'm currently working on adding keynote speaking as more of a part of my business in hopes of helping even more people. So it's a grind, and I love every single day of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk us through that grind.
Like, you want the boring day-to-day what I do at home sitting at my desk?
Yes.
I spent a lot of... Yeah, go ahead.
I honestly think owning your own business is very often glamorized. So, I've had my own
100%.
business for 2 years. So, yes, tell us the grind. Give us the behind the scenes.
So I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn, and I'm going to just spoil it for you and say I've gotten one lead off of LinkedIn as far as actually like someone coming to me and saying, hey, work with my business. But what I think being on a social media platform does for you is it creates credibility. It creates an opportunity for you to be creative in things. So 3 or 4 days a week, I spend 1 hour to 2 hours just building my network there. Again, it's about networking. It's about relationships. I spend a lot of time. One thing I didn't tell you I do is I host a leadership conference, an in-person leadership conference. And so I spend a lot of time getting sponsors for that, community sponsors, a lot of emails. I sit and I email a lot. And so working with other speakers who come and speak at that, I do a lot of outreach to different companies and say, hey, if you're dealing with any of these pain points, I want to work with you on that. And so I sit right here a very good chunk of the time and just continue to reach out to people and try and invest in myself. I still try and work out when I can. That health journey that I went through when I was really young is still a very, very big part of my life. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. And the grind really is just about what's the next right thing, because I could never pretend to tell you as a person what's going to be the next right thing for you. But it's just that trial and error of spend some time doing things. I have found that you have to let go of the things that don't give you joy and energy because they're going to drain you and you're going to get burnt out. And that has happened to me kind of a couple of times over the course of the 2.5 years that I've been doing this. So trying to find a lot of joy and energy in what it is that I'm doing is also part of the grind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give me an example of one of those things you've had to let go of, or even just outsource, or, one of those things that don't give you joy. I mean,
yeah,
maybe it's taxes. I don't know.
100%. The very first thing I did was hire a bookkeeper because I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So 100%.
I'm the same.
But there is this word that comes up for me over and over and over, and it's resistance. If I start to feel resistance towards something, it's uncomfortable, but that's my cue to lean in and ask myself better questions and say, why are you feeling resistance around this thing? Which in the past, I probably had energy around and I had excitement around, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I'll give you a very recent example is volunteering for this particular group or organization. And I've done it for 5 years now. And it in the past has given me so much joy and so much energy. And today I didn't want to go. I didn't want to prepare. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do it. When I was there, I was like watching the clock, and on my way home, I was like, felt like a waste of time. And so it's not that volunteering no longer suits me, right? I will probably always try and volunteer for different board of directors and different organizations. But I think that we can sometimes feel guilt and obligation towards certain things, especially if we've been doing them for a long time. And it can feel really hard to kind of pull out of that and just say, I'm not the right person for this anymore. I need to provide space for this opportunity for someone else to come in, and I can then go and help someone else. And so that's one of those things where if you start to feel resistance, it's one of my favorite words. If you feel resistance around something, don't pull back, don't ignore it, lean into it and get really uncomfortable and try and figure out why. And boundaries. Boundaries are really hard, but setting up boundaries around what it is that you do want to spend time doing and what you don't is going to be huge, especially if you do happen to be a high-level career person or someone who owns your own business or you're a parent. Honestly, pretty much if you're human, boundaries is probably that key for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually raises a good point. In certain things you'll outgrow. So it served you at one point in your life, and you're not doing yourself or them a favor by staying there. But I think being honest with yourself is really hard. And I'm talking from my own perspective, it is hard to say, okay, this no longer suits me. This no longer serves me or them. That's a really hard call to make. So yeah, I get that. And well done on the bookkeeper, just side notes.
Thank you.
I'm in year 2 of running my business, and I'm like, oh man, this is a mess. I went
to my tax appointment 2 days ago, and I said, I hope you have everything, because I have not looked at this in a year. I mean, I obviously have conversations with my bookkeeper and such, but I'm just like, I don't have to deal with that stuff that gives me anxiety. And then I don't do it. And then it gives me more anxiety, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. So if you happen to be listening to this and there's something that just gives you that feeling of just complete and utter exhaustion, it's okay to ask for help. I promise you, it's worth it.
Yes, I echo that 1,000,000%. So yeah, my first investment in an employee is my designer, because I just do not have the eye. I just cannot do it. It just drains me. I'm like, I will write all the words you ever want me to write, but don't make me put a picture together, please.
Yep.
So
I totally understand that one too.
Yeah. What is something that does give you joy that you like? And also, not to be cliched, but time passes and you have forgotten that you're even doing it. What is something that just brings you endless joy?
Honestly, spending time with the teams that I get to work with. They're 8-hour workshops sometimes, and they go by in the snap of a finger, and I could be there all day, and getting calls from CEOs and such, and they're like, can you help me work through this? And the mindset around it, I'm like, yes, I could spend all day on the phone with you. And I know I said I don't like one-on-one coaching, but there's something about being able to help someone when they're in a crisis that just feels so life-giving. And I really get joy and energy around being people's cheerleader I can't necessarily hold your hand and help you finish it, but I'm going to be your cheerleader all the way and help you discern what's the right and wrong thing to do. And that's why giving advice is one of my favorite things. Hopefully, I tend to have had enough experience that I at least can help a little bit. But yeah, it's why I love getting to do what I do.
Yeah, yeah. And without giving too much away, what does your workshop or what do your workshops look like? Those 8-hour, don't give your process away, but just like, what does it feel like? What do you cover? How does it feel? All of that. Yeah.
I am certified in multiple different programs. Working Genius, it's a productivity tool, unlike DISC, which is more of a personality tool, which I'm also certified in. 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team with Patrick Lencioni. It's just helping teams to understand the trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results that a team kind of has to work through in order to get the good results that they want. I also have a framework for leaders. It's self-awareness, adaptive integrity, which is how do you hold on to your values while also being able to adapt to the environment, and then your executive presence. How do you show up? How do you communicate? And it's building those quote unquote soft skills that I think a lot of leaders don't understand are as important as they are, to really start to understand what it looks like to have relationships. In case you can't notice a theme, I'm very big into the person to person because it's changed my life. But yeah, my workshops end up being, I don't do any trust falls. We're not doing anything with string or Legos or blocks. We're having conversations 99% of the time. And we just don't create space for that enough in the day-to-day work. And so we create that space during the workshop, and it ends up being really impactful for teams. So that is kind of what it looks like. We're just having a lot of conversation around a lot of things.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. And luckily you said the trust fall, because I remember doing something with straws and I was like, oh man, I never want to touch a straw again. Like all these straw things. Like, I don't know what I learned except I don't like straws.
That's how I feel about Legos.
Yeah. So my daughter's obsessed. Like she is obsessed with Legos. So got to get over it. I have to get over it. I'm like, such a waste. You just build this thing once and it's like done and you never touch it again. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole because I'll not make her happy if she ever listens to this. But yeah. Okay, so a question I love to ask, and especially because I've had a career internally and as a business owner. So what is something that people are not, and it's not talking enough about, or that we're glossing over in terms of building a career? And again, business owner, internal career, doesn't matter. Building a career that you enjoy. And you have already alluded to this as like, find something that brings you that joy and lights you up. So what does it take to actually get there?
One of my favorite words is energy. And I think that we often say, I don't have the energy for this, or, we question how much energy is this going to take from me. But I think something that we gloss over is the fact that we get to create the kind of energy that we want. It's not necessarily something that you have to, it's kind of like motivation. It's not you either have it or you don't. It's how much motivation can you muster in the moment, or how much energy can you muster up in that moment. And one of the quotes from my book is, your experiences can only rise to the level of energy that you bring to them. If you show up disengaged and you're sitting back and you're crossing your arms and you don't have the patience for something, it's going to come across that way, and people are going to react to you in that way, and it's going to affect that entire experience for you. But if you can go in and you can lean in and you can be open to having a great experience, your understanding of what that time did for you is going to be positive, and you're going to walk away feeling like it was worth your time, and other people are going to have seen you in a way that adds value to you in their book, right? In the way they see you. And so energy is not something that you either have or you don't have. It's something that you can kind of conjure in any given situation. And I want to encourage people to do that and to be that person that shows up with energy, because it's contagious. That's the other thing that I think we forget, is that if the room is down, it's probably because one person was a crab apple and it just kind of spiraled from there. But the same thing can be said for the positive spiral, in that if one person shows up with a lot of energy, it's likely to kind of rub off, and you can be that person.
Yeah, you absolutely can. That is such good advice, honestly. And I've actually recently read in the last 2 months a book called Good Vibes. And what you're saying is just, it relates to that. It's like you can choose how you show up and lift everyone up around you. So yeah, absolutely. That is such a good piece of advice that we don't talk about enough. I don't think I've ever had a conversation about that, so yeah, awesome. All right, let's circle back, go all the way back to young you again. What would you thank yourself for doing? And I ask this question because we often give our young selves a very hard time, like, oh, we messed up, or we didn't know what we were doing, or we made all these mistakes. But honestly, that is what set us up to where we are today. So what would you thank yourself for doing then?
This is going to sound really strange, and I'm going to caveat it with something, but I'm thankful that I was a bit selfish in taking care of myself, because I spent time focusing on my physical health, and I spent time investing in the ability to then go into a nursing home and work. And I'm really thankful that I spent so much time on myself. My relationships didn't suffer because of it, even though you think that sometimes if you do spend more time on you, your relationships are going to suffer or whatever, but it adds to them. I'm going to go back to the energy. It adds to your energy. It adds to your enthusiasm, which then rubs off on other people. And so if there's something that you're wanting to do now, I would encourage you to be a little bit, I don't like using the word selfish, but it's the word that most people resonate with. Just spend some time on you, because it's going to add to everyone else in your life, in your circle. And I'm so thankful that at an early age, I would say even in my teens, I definitely spent time working on me. And that has helped me over the years to truly help other people too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And how is that translated? Just a follow-up question, because as you were talking, I was thinking, as a mom, how does that help you as a mom?
First off, I want to say I'm very, very grateful and thankful and blessed to have a husband who is a 50-50 partner in every way, shape, and form. We've decided to stay close to my dad still lives 30 minutes from here. His parents live 7 minutes. And so we're very lucky to be in the situation that we are, which has allowed me a lot of space. I know there's single moms out there, and there's people who just don't have that capacity to do all of those things. So I do recognize the, the ability to do that. But as a mom, I feel like I will read in front of them. I will let them play on the floor in front of me while I read, and I will work out. And if they happen to be watching a show while I'm doing it or something along those lines, and some people would say, well, you should wait till they go to bed. I've actually had someone say that to me before. Well, you should be engaging with them and wait till they go to bed to clean or whatever. And I said, but they'll never see the example that you're setting. If you're not exercising and you're not reading and you're not cleaning in front of them and you're not asking them to help and to participate. And so as I would say that it has added to my kids' understanding of the fact that you should be taking care of yourself. We'll go on a walk and my daughter will go, walking is so good for you. She's 5. And I'm like, yeah, it's great for you. So just trying to build that in them at a really young age, that they do get to work on themselves and the conversations they're having with themselves, the way they talk to themselves. Those are the most important conversations that they can have. And so just trying to reiterate how they have those conversations, not only with themselves, but with each other specifically, because brothers and sisters can fight, but also the way that they're speaking to people older than them. And I try and emulate that for them every day so that they can see it, and guilt no longer really gets brought into the picture because I'm trying to add to them. It doesn't feel like I'm taking anything away.
Mm-hmm. One thing you said really stood out is they get to look after themselves, or they get to learn that. Like, yes, absolutely. I just wanted to highlight that it is an absolute privilege that they get to see that, and they get and my kids, they're 7 and 9, so my 7-year-old will come and down and put her yoga mat next to mine and do yoga, and my son will jump on the bike, and so yeah, and that was through just seeing me do it. I'm not telling them, oh, you better do yoga or you better, look after yourself.
Right.
So yeah, that's a really, really good lesson. Well, we are coming to the end. It has been awesome chatting to you and getting to know your story. So let people know how they can work with you. Obviously, we'll put the links and all of that in the description, but it's more about what you offer and how people can partner with you.
Yeah. Come to LinkedIn. That's where I spend a good chunk of my time. Just type in my name, Desiree Petrich, connect with me. Let me know that you found me on this podcast. I would love to connect with you. I spend a lot of time just trying to add value to people there as well. And my podcast, it's You're the Boss, Now What? It's for new and aspiring managers to really learn how to lead better. But ultimately, if you just want to create a better life for yourself, that's what the podcast is. And so I would love to see you over there if you have any interest in listening to that topic. And again, my book, Taking Intentional Action, How to Choose the Life You Lead. I would love to hear your thoughts if you happen to grab a copy. And thank you for listening. It's no longer hard to share my story because I've recognized that it is relatable to other people, but I do always appreciate when people take the time to listen. So thank you.
Yeah. And thank you. Thanks for spending an hour with me. It's been awesome.
Absolutely.